Hey guys, how's it going? This is Khan TDK, Mr. So Real, and in today's video we are getting back into the agent info series on how to get master in the survival game mode for the Division. Now I took a little bit of a hiatus where we didn't get into the nitty-gritty of some of the things. We talked about a few things in part 1 and part 2, part 2 being about skills. The last video we talked about in part 3 was how there's nothing wrong with kind of cutting and running when the situation gets kind of rough. So in this video, this is the last part of the agent info, how to get master in survival solo series. So I hope you guys enjoy this. This may be a little bit longer than the last one, but we're going to be talking about some very important stuff and basically how the hunter becomes the hunted. Alright, now before we get started, just as a preface, this video series will be focusing on PvE, the PvE version of the mode, as it may be less frustrating for solo players. Survival actually plays very different between PvE and PvP, so for the sake of making it as easy as possible, we're just going to stick with the PvE version of this mode. I need to give this a warning just in case someone is watching this video for the first time and they maybe have not heard this disclaimer, but if you have heard it, then you already know what the deal is. So why don't we get started on this next part of the agent info series on how to get master in survival solo, and let's get to hunting. It's time to get it on. Okay guys, now before we go any further, I had to actually stop and I recorded part 4's audio. Back when I recorded part 3's audio, I had already planned on finishing out the series this week, but over the weekend, if you were around, you know that I decided to go through the mode and show you guys how to do it solo, so that I could, number one, get some footage for this video, and number two, so that I could make sure that there were no sneaky additions that were put in the 1.6 patch, since most of the stuff that I was talking about was before 1.6 had even come up. And lo and behold, 1.6 did have quite a few what seemed to be pretty important changes in how survival works. Now, the one thing that I will say, the new 1.6 version really pushes the cold. If you watch the stream, and I will be posting a video of my fail stream, it's basically a bunch of attempts of me trying to do it solo and failing miserably. You should be able to look up and see a link to that right about now. And with the fail stream, the cold kicked my ass repeatedly. I cannot stress enough from what I said in video 1, getting clothes and finding warm clothes is very, very important. It seems that the cold is really taking its toll in 1.6 as opposed to 1.5. So really keep that in mind. Another thing that threw me off guard and nobody saw coming was that the hunters have a nice little new trick. If you watch the fail stream, I got all the way to the end and the hunter decided to blast me when I was down, and I had never seen that before, and it was lights out. So that's something else that you really do need to be careful about. Another thing of note since 1.6 is most people aren't playing it as much as they did in 1.5, so you won't have as many people going after DZ tech, so you should be able to get as much DZ tech as you need, hopefully, and it should be much easier to get into the crafting bits, which we're going to talk about today. So there have been some changes in 1.6, just keep that in mind. The lag is still ridiculous. I think it's even more ridiculous than it was in 1.5. I'm pretty sure Ubisoft has cut down on the servers, so you will have to deal with that. We had some people in the stream even saying that in the UK it was bad, and in Japan it's bad. So keep all of that in mind, guys, and make sure that you are very careful, even more careful than back in 1.5. So if you did clear it in 1.5 and you want a challenge, go try it out 1.6. Let me know what you think. Has it changed for you as well, or am I just tripping? But I really do think that the cold and the enemies are a bit more difficult now than they were before, and that may have something to do with the way that armor plays a part. Armor used to be a really big thing in 1.5, but now it is almost gone to some degree. So yeah, 1.6 seems like a much more challenging version of survival. Check it out, let me know, and let's get back on to how to master survival solo. And now in 1.6, this will be the final episode, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get back into taking ourselves from being the hunted and getting back into being the hunter. All right, guys, so if you've been following the series and your game has gotten you this far, then you should be in a prime position for yourself to become the hunter. Now let's do a little bit of a checklist before we get into this next key point. I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. We're starting at around the same point and we know what our goal is. Now you need to have your meds, you need to have high-end weapons, you need to have warm clothes, you need food, you need water, and if you've got all of that with some division tech, that'd be nice, then you'll be ready to go. Okay? All right. So cool. So if you have a nice little stockpile of fabric and division tech to start crafting high-end armor, then you are very, very good to go. If you don't have that much, at the very least, the first thing that you need to do is to craft a holster. Now, with a yellow holster, you'll get 3 stat buffs. And if you're lucky, you might even get something like health and a nice armor roll on top of it to keep you alive longer than if you didn't have one. Now, remember with the division that the stats that you have actually represent how much damage you can possibly do. So the more high-end gear that you have, the more damage you'll do and the more health you'll have. So as a solo player, you want as much of these two as possible. The other thing about this is it raises your gear score. Completing survival with a high gear score can get you closer to that master rank, so don't sleep on that. The more high-end gear that you have, the better. If you can have 2 to 3 or even 4 pieces of high-end gear and some purples, then you should be good to go. Now, a pro tip is if you have extra weapon parts and tools and some division tech, don't forget about your sidearm because that also counts toward your gear score. If you want to make a high-end pistol, then remember just for the points, after you have your, I would choose the sniper rifle, the M44 and an ACR, but after you have your primary and you have your special weapon, then make sure that you have enough for a pistol if you need it. You don't necessarily need the pistol. You can totally get the master rank without a pistol, but if you just want to be on the safe side, then craft one of those. It should help out a lot. So I find that usually if I have about 3 high ends or 3 purple gear pieces and the 2 high-end weapons, I'm kind of good to go for the next section, and I don't really have to sweat about the damage. You will have to play smart, of course, but if you do go down, always remember that nobody will come around to save you. I've saved a couple people every now and then towards the end, but generally people do not save you, and they will loot your body, and that'll be that. You'll just be the next guy to give them something. So just keep that in mind, that you really want to play carefully. Even though you have better stats, you may have better weapons, but please remember to be careful. Now, by this point, you need to start working on killing named NPCs. This, in a nutshell, is how you get a high score. The more NPCs that you kill, the higher the score will be. It doesn't really say this so much, but towards the end, you'll notice that the more NPCs you kill, the higher your score will be. This is the thing that will get you that killer score, and it will also get you some survival caches. Now, the survival caches also have pretty nice things in them, and yeah, that's really what you want to be aiming for when you do kill your bosses. Make sure that you pick up those caches. And I try to kill around 3 bosses, maybe 4 if you want to be safe to hit master, but 3 bosses plus a pretty high gear score and a decent time, maybe leaving at a decent time, should be okay. You should be all right at that point. The survival caches usually have about 4 items inside, and some of the better loot include the survival exclusive weapon. I think it's called the MDR. And this is why you really need to be careful with who's around you when you deal with the named bosses. Someone might sneak in and try to gank your cache, and as we saw in part 2, depending on how you play it, it may not work out for them. If you play it smart, then the NPCs will probably body them because they might think that they're hot shit. But as long as you play it smart, you should be good. And just remember, if you take out an enemy, you do want to try to be close enough to get your caches without too much problem. But people do lurk in the shadows, so if it gets ganked, don't worry about it, because actually you're trying to just complete master solo. So you can always get, items from somewhere else. But if your goal is to get master rank solo, then the caches don't really matter. But, it's a nice bonus to have. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking to yourself, Khan, what is wrong with you? How am I supposed to kill 3 or even 4 bosses solo? Now, killing 3 or 4 bosses is quite a lot to do solo. I will admit that. But this is the master rank, so just make sure that you have the previously mentioned number of high ends and high end gear and the weapons and all of that stuff, and you should be good to go. It's actually not as hard as you may think if you play it smart, especially if you play it from the sniper perspective. And if you can snipe, then playing it from range is usually pretty good, and it can work out to your benefit as long as you know when to cut and run and all that stuff. Now, the more that you streamline your medical gathering part in the beginning, the more time you'll have to farm the bosses, which can lead to a higher score. This is why I really suggest that you learn a kind of good route for getting the medicine and getting the syringes and all of that stuff, so that when it's time to actually deal with the bosses, you can deal with them pretty quickly and have enough time to farm even more. Now, if you can pull all of this off and extract, then you should be staring at the master rank screen, and let me be the first to say, congratulations. Now, I know that it is a lot to think about, and it's not going to be a breeze, walk in the park, easy peasy, but a lot of it is luck, to be honest, and that depends on where they spawn you. Where you get spawned in the servers really makes a huge difference. So if it doesn't work out, just give it another try and try to get more and more efficient each time that you do it. The more that you try, the better you should get at it, and eventually you will hit that home run and be glorious. Again, remember to take your time. It's not a rush. And if you can't get it the first time, don't get frustrated and don't give up. Just remember the beginning where you have to get your medicine and the clothes and stuff, that really takes a lot of time. And if you can streamline that and get to a good place where you can grab a bunch of that stuff, then you should be in a good position towards the end to farm bosses and get that high score. All right, so that is it, guys. I wish you all the best of luck. I hope you can do it as soon as possible. And again, shout out to Mark Montoya for giving me the heads up, letting me know that people still want to see this content. And if there are any other pieces of content that I've done in the past that maybe you'd like to see more of, remember to let me know. Hit me up on Twitter. You can also follow me on Instagram or check out the Facebook page, where I spend quite a bit of time lately talking to the people who follow the channel, and we talk about games, all kinds of stuff. And shout outs to everybody who's still playing the Division. I know a lot of people have jumped ship. So yeah, shout outs to you guys, and thank you guys for all the support for the channel. Again, I am Khan, TDK, Mr. So Real. I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, take care, good luck on getting Master in Survival, and I'll see you later. Peace.
Huh.